Welcome back to the Neutral Zone. Today we're going to be doing part 2 of our CBS ranking top 25 coaches reaction. We did the coaches 25 to 16 a couple of days ago, so now we're doing 15 to 1. We have not looked at the list. At least I haven't. I'm assuming you haven't
I didn't
either.
look at it either. No.
So it's gonna be kind of fun to get into it. As always, if you're new to the channel, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss an upload. We're gonna get back to consistently uploading. The next episode was probably gonna drop Friday, and then we have a live show this Sunday, our first live back in like 3 months. It's fun to kind of get into the off season. We have the college football game coming out. We're gonna be talking about that a lot of transfer portal stuff. So please continue to rock with us. It's gonna be fun as always. But let's go ahead and get right into the number 15. So obviously we left off at David Dornan, NC State.
Yeah.
So number 15, we have Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State. How do you feel about Mike Gundy being there?
So I got to see what's ahead of him. Mike Gundy's been at Oklahoma State for a long time. And I mean, while he hasn't broke through that glass ceiling of being a championship contender, I think he's been a very steady coach, a good winning coach. So I'm going to reserve judgment because I believe that there might be 14 coaches better, but I believe he's a very consistent coach and pretty good. So I just got to see the other 14 ahead of him.
I agree. I think consistent is the key word for him. As it says in the little description here, he had 8 10-win seasons out of 18 seasons coaching there. If that program was only done it 3 times in their history outside of that. So he's the most winningest coach in Oklahoma State history. They hadn't had other 10-win teams until the early 80s. So that's 40 years ago.
At this point, I just like to see him punch through and actually make them a national championship contender.
And I don't think Oklahoma State has that kind of brand. And obviously, I mean, winning 10 games in itself is very difficult in college football. So the fact that he's been able to do that consistently, I think is good. He moves up 2 spots from last year's CBS ranking at 17, but I like him here at 15. I think he's a top 20 coach for sure. Moving on, we have Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss.
So I'm gonna be honest, and I'll start this. I think this is pretty low. I think Lane Kiffin is
disrespectful.
Yeah, I think so when I say higher, I think he should be closer to 1. Now, I don't think he should be 1, but I would definitely have Lane Kiffin as a top 10 coach in college football. I mean, this is a guy who's dang near done it all, turned around a number of programs to include some small programs, Florida Atlantic. So I think Lane Kiffin is one of the best coaches, just pure coaches in college football.
So I think he's a great recruiter.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
I think we'll have to see how he molds this Ole Miss team. This is obviously his best situation he's had. He's never won a conference title as a head coach. Obviously, he was at a smaller schools. But I think if he's able to, make some real noise in the SEC, then I would give him more credit. I'm not mad at the rank 14. I would be able to see what's higher, obviously.
Yeah, and that's the hard part is who's
But
higher.
I think so far, I mean, I think this is fair. If we look at,
but and I'm gonna be honest, okay,
like I don't think he's a better coach than Ferentz.
But let me say this: there are some people that Ferentz is below. I think that's a much closer conversation now, and I'm going to take a guess, and I think this is where I would be upset. I think he is a better coach than Kalen DeBoer, and I think DeBoer is going to be higher than him. And I say that because he's Kalen DeBoer outside of Fresno State, which non-Power 5, and one good season at Washington State. Really, what has he done? But we'll see.
All right, moving on to 13, we have Chris Kleiman, or I'm assuming I'm pronouncing it right. I'm hoping. Let me move back up so we don't give away the next coach. But Kansas State head coach. Obviously, they won the Big 12 title like 2 years ago when they had Deuce Vaughn, 9-4 mark last year. Obviously, the Big 12 is going to be wide open this year with no Texas, Oklahoma. So I think Kansas State has a chance to kind of make some noise. Obviously, Utah moved over. That's my favorite. But I would say Lane Kiffin is a better coach than him.
I would say Fritz, I would say Gundy, and I would say Lane Kiffin are better, should be ranked higher than him.
Yeah, I mean, I want to know where this team was before he coached there. I don't know
Yeah,
too
good
much
point.
about him, so I'm not going to speak as if I know his entire coaching resume and his win-loss percentage at Kansas State, because I don't watch too much Kansas State football. And that's just me being honest. He was number 12 last year. He moved back one spot. Obviously he was number 12, and that's coming off of the Big 12 title. So he's had
Yes.
a pretty good run the last 2 years. So we'll have to see how he kind of establishes himself and the Wildcats this year without having Texas and Oklahoma to deal with. So I'm assuming they're going to be pretty good next year as well. Kansas, we have Lance Leipold. Hopefully, I'm saying that name right as well. He moved up 11 spots from last year. Go ahead.
So I think Leipold gets a lot of love because of what he's done at Kansas. But again, when I look in totality and I look at some of these other coaches, I think they have better resumes. Now, he did do a full turnaround job on Kansas, which was a notorious bottom feeder for
terrible.
many years. So I you have to give him credit for that. But I can't put his accomplishments with, again, Frentz, Gundy, Kiffin, and say that they hold up. But he has done a masterful job at Kansas. So I think this one I'm a little less upset about. But I don't think his accomplishments match up with some of those other coaches that are behind him.
I agree. I wouldn't put him in the top 12. And again, these are back-to-back coaches that I don't know too much about. Now, obviously, Kansas was a dumpster fire before he got there, and he completely turned them around. They were ranked in the top 25 the past couple of seasons consistently. And I think they have a really good chance to win the Big 12 this year. Like I said, it's wide open. You have Utah, Kansas State, Colorado, Kansas. You have Oklahoma State. So there's a lot of teams that I wouldn't be surprised. TCU, I wouldn't be surprised if they won it. And I think Kansas is definitely in the top 4 to 5 as far as odds go, in my opinion, to win the Big 12 this year. And he's a big reason. Obviously, they got that big stadium renovation. So there's a lot of good things going for Kansas right now, Kansas football. So this is just another one. Moving on, James Franklin. I don't like this at all. I think he should be higher.
I think so too. I think he's a top 10 coach. And I mean, are we forgetting what he did at Vanderbilt? Like to get the Penn State job where he took Vanderbilt, a notorious dumpster fire in the SEC, and had them competing at a high level prior to getting the Penn State job. And then, I'm sure people are going to hold the can't beat Ohio State, can't beat Michigan against them, which, okay, fair. But I think he's a top 10 coach for sure.
Yeah, I think he's a top 10 coach as well. He's one of my favorite coaches, obviously outside of my favorite team, but I think he's one of my favorite coaches. I've been on record saying that as well. I think now that there's no divisions in the Big Ten, and I think now that we have a 12-team playoff, Penn State is going to be a shoe-in, yearly to fight for a playoff spot. I think I'd be more surprised if Penn State is not in the playoff hunt every year than I would be if they are in the playoff hunt every year. He moved back one spot. I think this is going to be his best team that he's had in a really long time, probably ever. So I think they have a really good chance to get in the playoffs, if not win the Big Ten. Obviously, you have Oregon, you have USC, Ohio State, Michigan. So it's going to be tough. But I do like James Franklin here. I wish he was a few spots higher, but we'll see what the next coach is. Moving on, number 10, you have Lincoln Riley. So I'm not mad at that at all.
No.
I think Lincoln Riley deserves this spot, if not higher. He's had multiple Heisman winners, multiple quarterbacks in the NFL that are starting in the NFL. Obviously, defense is a big issue for him, which, I mean, we've had conversations about his defensive woes as a head coach. He moves back from 4 to 10 based on last year's ranking. Obviously, this year, very lackluster, disappointing compared to what their expectations was. They lost to Tulane in the Sugar Bowl, I believe, or the Fiesta Bowl, maybe, in 2023 when Caleb Williams won the Heisman. Then obviously this year lost a lot of games and kind of fell off. The floor kind of fell off from underneath them. How do you feel about Lincoln Riley being number 10, though?
I mean, I think he's an offensive master, but I think to be that great coach, he has to pay more attention to defense. Defense has been his Achilles heel, literally his entire coaching career. I don't think anybody has anything to say bad about him in terms of coaching the offensive side of the ball. But I think he has to be able to put together a serviceable defense to be a top coach in that top 5 where he literally could and should be. But he just almost pays no attention to defense.
So are you mad about 10 or do you think that's fair?
No. I think 10 is very fair.
Okay, moving on. We have Dan landing at Oregon. So I want to talk about this for a second. Now, I think Dan, so he moves up 27 spots. I'm not a huge fan of this.
I'm not either.
The reason being, there's such a small sample size. I think Oregon is a blue blood. Oregon is a really good school. So I'm not saying any coach can go in and do what he's done,
Right.
but it's not like a Lincoln Riley situation where he went to Oklahoma for a few years. Now he's been at USC for a few years and he's consistently winning.
Right.
So I would probably swap the two. Obviously, Dan Lanning is more relevant now. He was relevant with the whole Alabama coaching job, and
Yeah.
I think he's more relevant, so it's easier to put him higher based on the success he's having right now. But if this is just ranking coaches based off of last year, then he'd probably be a little bit higher to me. But I would hope that this is entire resumes because at the end of the day, you're not a coach isn't on the field playing, so a coach isn't gonna progressively get worse as a coach, if that makes sense. Like you're not losing athleticism. So I think you have to look at in totality. Your scheme might change, but your mindset as a coach, the only thing that changes is your players. So it's not like an NBA player that loses athleticism, so now he has to become more of a jump shooter. Like a coach is a coach. So I think when you look at Frentz and you look at Lincoln Riley, you look at some of the other guys, I'd probably move them higher based on their entire body of work, not just the last 2 seasons of being relevant in the playoff conversation.
Yeah, no knock to Lanning, and he has been relevant in the playoff conversation, but he has not been a playoff coach. Lincoln Riley has. Now, not in the last 2 seasons, but when he was at Oklahoma, he was a playoff coach. He should get credit for that. I think Dan Lanning is a very good coach. I don't think he has the resume to be ranked higher than Lincoln Riley.
Yeah. Moving on to number 8, we have Mike Norvell. In my opinion, same situation. I think it's a little bit different just because Oregon wasn't a dumpster fire when Lanning took over. I think Florida State was on the decline heavily when Mike Norvell got there. Obviously, you had the Jameis Winston era and then a complete fall off. They were losing to all types of FCS teams. They were, not even bowl eligible at one point. So I think
coaches left and right.
Yeah. So I think the way that Mike Norvell has been able to change the program around, and everybody on this channel knows I hate Florida State. I hate him more than South Carolina. I'm a big Clemson fan. I hate him, but you can't knock what he's done there. Obviously, winning the ACC, having extreme success with Florida State, and I think realistically, obviously, if they were to had Jordan Travis last year, it's an entirely different situation that they finished the season as. Not saying they would have won the national championship or been in the playoffs, but entire different landscape of what they would have done. They were fairly dominant throughout the year. They had a few close games, but very good season last year. So I like Norvell here, but same situation as Lanning. I need to see more against top teams. Obviously, they beat a Clemson, they beat a LSU, but there's really not enough substance for me to put him as a top 10 coach right now.
Yeah, so let me clarify this, and I know there may be some Oregon and Florida State fans that watch this. I don't have a problem with those two coaches being top 10. What I do have a problem with is them being ranked above Lincoln Riley, who has a much better resume. Are they good coaches? Did they go to situations where they were able to?
I think even James Franklin.
And we could probably go. So when I look at the resume, yes, Norvell really, to me, has had one very good season, and then the season before Florida State was a okay season. I'm not putting that above James Franklin, Frentz, who's been very consistent, and again, Lincoln Riley, who has kind of become the quarterback whisperer with multiple Heismans and appearances in the college football playoff. I can't put him as a coach higher than those people.
I agree. But moving on, number 7, we have Kalen DeBoer, Alabama. Same situation. I feel like we're repeating ourselves over and over. I'd probably move Kalen DeBoer back to like 11, 12, or 13. Right around there. I'd jump a bunch of people ahead. But at the end of the day, he had a really good year with Washington last year. They had a really good team. I think we're gonna find out a lot about him at Alabama, even though Alabama has a great roster, a good 4 or 5 star ratio. They have all the opportunities, all of the resources for him to succeed. At the end of the day, you still have to beat a Georgia, you still have to beat a LSU and A&M and Oklahoma, Texas. So you're going against real powerhouses every other week or every week. So it's not like Washington where you only got to worry about Oregon and USC. You are legitimately having to play 6, 7, 8 teams that can beat you any given Saturday. So I'm excited to see how good he does here. I'm rooting for him. I don't want Alabama to go down the trash can. That's not what I want, because you want the good teams to be good. So I really hope he can kind of replace Nick Saban and keep the ball rolling. Obviously, I don't want him to win every year, but I'd love for them to still be relevant in the world of college football.
Yeah, I think you made a very good point, which is quite simple. We're going to see how good of a coach he is these upcoming seasons. The expectation at Alabama is championships or bust. If he goes 3-4 years without winning a championship, then I think we look at him a little bit differently. And I say this because that level of expectation is different than in Washington, where you can be a runner-up, and that was a great season. At Alabama, is championship or bust. So 3-4 seasons without a championship, we're going to look at him completely different.
Definitely. Moving on. Kyle Whittingham. I love this spot for him.
Yeah.
I love 6 for him. He moves up 1 spot. I was very high on Utah last year, the last 2 years, really. I think they're the most disrespected program. I think Whittingham may just be the most disrespected coach, him and a couple of other guys. But I think they're my favorite for the Big 12. I think if there's any team in college football that I had to, let's just say hypothetically, I had $100 and I say they are guaranteed a lock for the playoffs, I'm putting it on Utah. I think Utah only maybe loses 1 to 2 games this year. Obviously, barring any injuries to Cam Rising, we saw that situation.
Yeah.
I'm assuming a healthy Utah loses maybe 2 games this year, and I think a 10-2 team out of the Big 12 not only goes to the Big 12 title game, but they get in the playoffs. So I think Whittingham deserves all the credit in the world. A very small program in terms of notoriety as far as blue bloods go. So, and I think he's been able to consistently keep that team afloat. And I'm excited for the 12-team playoffs. I want to see Utah in the playoffs. I think they're one of the toughest teams to play. They have one of the toughest defenses. They play smash mouth football. And I think he's a really good coach. He's been consistent.
Yeah, I think Kyle Whittingham earned my respect more this last season than any other season. The fact that he kept Utah in the hunt with losing what we thought was their best player by far. And really, he had 2 guys who could not throw the ball, and they dominated on defense. And he kept them in the top 25 conversation the entire year. So he's earned my respect. I think this is deserved. And I wouldn't, and mind you, barring seeing this top 5, I think he's probably a top 5 coach.
All right. I'll let you take this one first. Steve Sarkisian, number 5.
See, this is okay. No knock to Sarkisian and what
he moves done. He moves up 32 spots, by the way.
And what he's done at Texas. But I can't put him over Whittingham. I can't put him over Lincoln. This is a guy who's had 1 good season. 1 good season in Texas. Now, do I think he's a heck of a coach? Yes. Is he a heck of an offensive coordinator? Yes. He was at Alabama, and he's been throughout his career. But I'm not putting him over people. Like, I feel this is disrespectful to Whittingham. I feel this is disrespectful to Lincoln Riley. I don't believe he's a better coach than them because of 1 good year.
Yeah, so whoever wrote this, which, I mean, we can look at after, it says, I respect the job that he's done in Austin and continues to do so. This is slightly too high. Sark is one of the coaches I had behind Lincoln Riley. Last season was the first time a Sarkisian team won a conference title or won 10 games.
Yes. How do you put him over Lincoln Riley? How do you put him over Whittingham? These are guys who, let me say, Lincoln Riley had a down year last year, especially on the offensive side, but he is a consistent 10-win guy. Right? Yeah, the fact that he didn't have 10 wins last year is shocking.
I'm assuming this list is obviously going off of recency bias, but I think
it is very.
Like I said, when it comes to coaching, you can't just look at someone's most recent year and say, yeah, this coach is a top 5 coach, because there's so many different factors that goes into coaching, whether it be injuries, whether it be the playoff format, it could be anything. So I don't agree with the fact that Sark is a top 5 coach as of right now, because there's a lot more other people that have better resumes. So, I mean, we'll see. Obviously, he's on the upward trajectory. I think he has one of the most complete rosters in college football heading into next year. So it could be projecting a little bit. But at the end of the day, you have to perform. But moving on, Brian Kelly, LSU. This is a little tricky for me. Yeah. I'm not mad at it, though, because I do think he's a top 10 coach, top 8 coach. Obviously, he had really good seasons at Notre Dame. When the lights got bright, they lost, obviously. But once the playoffs, I think twice. Obviously, LSU just had a Heisman winner. But I think this was the most talented team on paper, and he didn't live up to the hype there. So we'll have to see what he does at LSU now. I anticipate them taking a step back this year.
Yeah.
And I mean, what were they? 9-4 last year? 9-4 or 10-4?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So give or take right around there. So this guy says it's safe to say that if the Tigers don't earn a playoff berth in 2024, the heat will turn up on Kelly's seat, and I agree with that. I think LSU is a certified program in college football, and if you're not consistently in that playoff discussion, which they were not after like week 7, I think the fans, and I wouldn't say fans, the media is going to immediately turn and say, okay, let's get somebody in here who can do the job correctly.
Yeah, this pick is very weird for me. Outside of the talent that LSU had on offense, which literally they had a quarterback and 2 wide receivers go in the first round. My question is, then if Brian Kelly is such a great coach and you had all that offensive talent, why did this team not perform better? And because they underperformed, why is he not getting docked the same way that it seems that Lincoln Riley is getting docked for one bad season? Again, in totality, I would say Brian Kelly belongs here. Where I have an issue with this is, how do you separate Lincoln Riley to almost outside of the top 10, but you don't knock Brian Kelly for, again, based off of the talent that he had, especially on offense, for a bad season at LSU, but you do knock Lincoln Riley?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of inconsistency. But it's like I said, I think a lot of it comes to projection as well. Moving on, number 3.
Hold on. Let me take this one.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to let you go first.
Because obviously, I think at this point, if you are a college football fan, you can pick the top 3, right? I know who the top 3 are, and I have not seen the list, but I know who they're going to be. So obviously, I'm an Ohio State fan.
And he did not move from last year, by the way. Stayed at 3.
I think if we look at the other person, and I'll just give the list. Obviously, Kirby Smart's up there. Obviously, Ryan Day's up there. If you look at and you say Kirby Smart is a better coach than Dabo Swinney, I'm willing to have that argument, right? That 2 national championships. I think Dabo's done it longer. And we can talk about, his policies in the transfer portal, but to me, that has nothing to do with him as a coach. I am an Ohio State fan, and you guys know this, but there is absolutely no way that Ryan Day should be ahead of Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney has 2 national championships, has been consistently a 10-win guy. And Ryan Day has for the time that he's been at Ohio State. But remember this, and this is where Dabo Swinney needs respect. Ohio State has been a blue blood since as long as I lived. I barely remember Clemson before Dabo Swinney got there. Dabo Swinney made them a blue blood. He made them a 10-win team. He's made them in the national championship picture literally just about every year that he's been there past his first 2 years. And like I said, this past year, the fact that is not getting more respect. And again, no knock to Ryan Day. I love Ryan Day. Ryan Day should not, when you compare resumes, should not be ahead of Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney is a much better coach. He has a much better resume. And really, to be honest, if you want, like I said, if you want to go small sample size and say Kirby Smart's better, okay. I would have had Dabo Swinney number 1. I think after Nick Saban left college football, Dabo Swinney has the best resume and the most consistency as a head coach in college football. And to me, there's no questions. And I am not a Clemson fan, and my son will tell you that. I literally want to disown him for being a traitor.
Well, traitor's crazy. So I think it's crazy. So I agree. I think he should be at least at 2. I personally, even if I could take the bias out and I could just run the numbers, I think like you said, I think he should be number 1. Now, if you want to say right now, who's the top coach, that I would say it's Kirby Smart, because he's had 2 championships before Clemson has had 1. So I can get down with that logic. But I mean, like you said, Clemson, he built Clemson from the ground up. He's had 2 national championships. He's been in the playoffs 6 or 7 times.
But hold on, pause, because I think that's something we really need to anchor down on, right? Ryan Day went to an Ohio State team that he took over from Urban Meyer that was in the national championship picture. Now, no knock, and I'm not knocking Kirby Smart because he did step up Georgia a bit. But it's not like Georgia was a bad team before Kirby Smart. When Rick was there, they were a 10-win team. Let's give credit to the fact that Dabo built Clemson. The fact that Clemson is now considered a blue blood, that they are considered a national championship contender, the fact that we consider a 9-win season at Clemson a down year is because of Dabo Swinney. It is because of Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney has created the culture of them being a national championship contender. I think the other 2 coaches can't say that.
I think a lot of it also stems from the whole transfer portal stuff, which we'll probably do a video here soon about like Clemson and the transfer portal and stuff like that. Obviously, it says here there are 4 teams who have not accepted a transfer portal. 3 of them are service academies, and Clemson is the 4th. Oh, I actually went down. So obviously,
I think we knew.
we all knew, but we'll give more Clemson and Dabo attention later. Obviously, him at number 3, but Ryan Day at number 2. I would probably have him at number 3 or 4, give or take. I'm not mad at either. I think Ohio State has had the talent, and they haven't been able to kind of reach the top. I mean, the last championship was Ezekiel Elliott, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 2014.
So 10 years ago. I don't know how long he's been there. I think 5 years. 4 years.
Yeah. 5 years, I think.
So I think they made it to the national championship game once.
They have not made it to the national championship game with him. No, they did. The year they got blown out. The year they beat Clemson and they got blown out by Alabama.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, I think, obviously, with the 12-team playoff, they're going to have a lot more success. I mean, recruiting is, at an all-time high for them. Transfer portal is big for them this offseason. So, I definitely think he deserves to be in the top 3 to 4. But I think, kind of to your point, when you have such a, I would say, head start on a lot of people, when you look at, the roster you have, it's kind of like Lane Kiffin's situation, how he has Ole Miss. Well, not really, because Ohio State is way higher than Ole Miss. I would say I would say the Dan Lanning situation. I compare it to that. Obviously, there's a little bit more sample size, but Dan Lanning was able to go into a program already with a bunch of talent, and now he's winning. Obviously, Ryan Day is at Ohio State now. The whole Michigan thing, can he beat Michigan? I don't think it's that big of a deal. Obviously, Ohio State fans and Michigan fans, they obviously think they do. But in my opinion, I know you said this before, when you guys lost to Michigan, you did not want to win a championship without beating Michigan again. Fact. In my opinion, like if I were to lose to a Florida State or a South Carolina, win the national championship, I could care less because at the end of the day, we won the national championship. So if Ryan Day, even if he never beats Michigan again, if he wins the national championship, at the end of the day, he's doing his job, which is winning a national championship. So I understand it. And I do think he has earned the right to be up here. In the discussions of the Kirby Smarts, Dabo Sweeney's, Lincoln Riley's, all of them, I just personally wouldn't have him at 2. And obviously Kirby Smart, he says easiest vote on the board. I would have went back and forth between him and Dabo, but I can't argue. I can't say someone's stupid for having Kirby Smart at 1. No, and at the end of the day, he's been the standard in college football for the last 3 to 4 seasons, and I think he's earned the spot there.
Yeah, so let me go to Ryan Day. Like I said, I would have Dabo over him, and I would probably have him down to maybe 5. My concern is when we're talking about coaching, see, understand that Ohio State is a machine, and we can hate it or love it. Yes, I'm an Ohio State fan, and yes, I love Ryan Day. But Ohio State is a machine. Let me say this, and I mean this in all sincerity. I could go to Ohio State and win 10 games as the coach. And I don't know anything about coaching college football. Now, over years, I'll probably lose it. But next year, I could go to Ohio State and win 10 games. They are just that much better. And it is partially because of the program. Do I think he's a great recruiter? Yes. But to be at this point, you're expected to win big games. Ryan Day has not won big games. You got one win against Michigan. You got one win against Clemson, but you haven't been with as much talent as these teams have had. You should have at least one national championship. As much talent as these teams have had, I'm not going to say, hey, you should sweep Michigan. Michigan obviously won a national championship last year. They came back, but you shouldn't be 0 for 3 in your last 3 games against Michigan. You can't have those things on your record when you're coming off of back-to-back coaches that dominated Michigan and won national championships. The expectation is that you're better than what you are. And it's crazy because I think Ryan Day could possibly be on the hot seat if he had a bad year and lost to Michigan again this year.
What's a bad year?
I think at Ohio State, 10-2 is a bad year.
But I think 10-2 gets you in the playoffs. I don't think he gets fired if they're in the playoffs.
I think if they because the expectation at Ohio State next year is humongous. It is humongous.
Yeah.
If you get embarrassed in the Michigan game next year, and then you lose a playoff game, especially like your first round game next year, I think Ryan Day's gone. If you,
Yeah, I can see that.
because the expectation is with all that we brought in the transfer portal, all the players that came back, that we should be in the national championship picture. So I think both have to fit, right? If you lose to Michigan, but you have a good run in the playoffs, okay, he's probably safe. But if you have a upset loss in the playoffs, and or you lose to Oregon and you lose to Michigan, like I think you're done. Yeah, so that Kirby, I'll be honest, on my personal list, I would have Kirby number 2. I would have Dabo number 1. Again, like
I feel like that's a toss-up. I'm not mad at either.
No, I mean, but that's why I say my personal list.
Yeah.
Like I said from the beginning, if somebody told me they had Kirby Smart number 1, I think that's a valid argument. Like you said, though, I think we can line up accolades, and Dabo literally drowns him in accolades over the course of their career. Now, obviously, Dabo has a bigger sample size. Kirby has been amazing at Georgia, and I take nothing away from Kirby. So the fact that I even put him in the conversation with Dabo, to me, speaks to how amazing of a coach he is. But Dabo has done this for now decades. And I have to give credit to the fact that this is a constant 10-win guy for decades. That we look at a 9-win season and we are like, oh, Clemson's done off of a 9-win season. That is now so out of character at Clemson before Dabo, a 9-win season, they would have been partying in the streets. But now it's like, what's going on at Clemson? Everything's on fire because that is how much Dabo has built up that program. I have to give him credit for that. I am not a Clemson fan, but I have to give the consistency credit. No knock to Kirby, but I would have him number 2.
Yeah, I mean, what we can do eventually is make our own list. I think that would be pretty fun. Obviously ranking, and obviously we're going to do our top 25 teams heading into the play. I'm not heading into the playoffs, heading into the regular season as well. We have our preview series coming up. We're going to break down the schedule. That's where we found a lot of you guys last year. That series is super fun. So kind of crazy to think we're going into our second year of doing this already. That year went by super quick because I mean we started in May, June time last year when we did the previews.
It's about that time.
That's when the channel kind of blew up and we made a lot more kind of headway and progress towards the college football scene. So it's been pretty fun. But as always, if you guys are new, if you guys made it this far, please subscribe, hit that notification bell, like the video, comment. Who do you guys have at number 1 as your number 1 coach in college football? We have a live show coming this Sunday. We're going to have another video dropping Friday.
Hold on. I feel like a lot of fans are going to put Kirby 1. But what I challenge you guys, you fans to do is, and you could do it on Wikipedia page, go to Dabo's Wikipedia page and look at his accolades, and go to Kirby's Wikipedia page and look at his accolades, compare the two, and then explain, taking the fan out of it, why Kirby Smart is a better coach than Dabo Swinney.
Not only taking the fan out of it, but taking the spies away from Dabo. Because I will say, I think this may be a hot take. Do you think Dabo is one of the most hated coaches in college football?
I think,
because what other coach could really be hated outside of him?
Well, because I think Nick Saban was hated. I think Kirby gets hate, but Dabo is so staunch in the way that he wants to run a program that it can be polarizing, right? I'm not taking any transfer portal people. So some of the way he runs Clemson, and again, it's worked. Nobody can knock him, but the way he's run Clemson, especially, I think that all came more to light with this whole as the transfer portal exploded. And he said, I care more about the chemistry of this team, the locker room, and character of the players that enter this room. I think that has brought him under scrutiny. But really, to me, because you remember at Alabama when after Nick Saban left, they were doing the not Dabo, and I'm like, that's crazy. That's crazy. Dabo Swinney is an amazing coach. Anybody listen, if Ryan Day left and I got told that we were getting Dabo, I'd be excited. Now I would be concerned about the transfer portal stance. I absolutely would. But do I think Dabo Swinney on the sideline and getting guys ready to play is a heck of a coach? Absolutely. Do I believe that his stance on the transfer portal is a little outdated? Absolutely.
So what we'll do, since we kind of went off in a tangent on Friday, we'll post the video talking about Clemson, Dabo, and the transfer portal. That's what we'll talk about Friday. Okay. And then Sunday we have the live show. We look forward to seeing you guys there. Thank you guys as always. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let us know in the comment section what you guys thought, and we will see you guys Friday. Peace out, everybody.